What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. I've been gardening for almost a decade now, and along the way I've tried many different techniques, tips, and tricks to get the most out of my garden and saving seeds. But now I'm here to let you know you're being lied to. So today I want to clear that up and show you the right way to save and grow your seeds. Let's go! Before I get into the meat of today's video, I need your input. Over the years, I received hundreds of questions regarding seeds, soil, climate, and many other things. To answer these questions as best I can and serve you, I'm thinking about starting an in-depth online gardening course that will take you from starting your garden from scratch to maximizing your harvest. I want to create something that is high value, and in order to do that, I need your input. I've made a survey. You can find it in the description of this video. I'd really appreciate if you went through, filled out those questions so that I can create something that benefits you. So let's get back into the video for today. A lot of you have probably seen videos on YouTube where someone takes a tomato, they slice it up in a piece, bury that slice, and then a few days later, the seeds magically pop up and they're beautiful sprouts. While at first glance, this seems like a great way to do it, it's actually not realistic or practical. First off, the person is often wasting the whole tomato when they're burying it and putting in slices in the ground like that, when you could actually be eating that tomato if you save the seeds the correct way. The reason I use the word correct is because the way I'm going to show you how to save seeds is mimicking how nature does it. I'm not going to try to defy the laws of nature in the garden. We want to find one of our tomato varieties that are open pollinated or heirloom, and I'll get into more of the specifics of that later in the video. After we've chosen the variety, we want to pick plants that are big, healthy, and that have grown well. For instance, right here is a pink accordion tomato. It's done excellent, and I grabbed some tomatoes off of it to save the seeds from, so it doesn't have any ripe right now, but I'll bring you into the old food forest where I have a couple ripe ones in there. I'm not going to be saving the seeds from this tomato because this plant didn't do as well as the other one I have, but I just want to cut it off and show you how I'm going to do it for demonstration. And you want the tomatoes to be ripe, not rotting, but ripe. It could be a little riper than this, but I'm gonna open this one up, show you how to save the seeds, and then I have the tomato that I saved seeds from a couple days ago and show you what they look like after the process is finished. When it comes to tomatoes, you don't really have to worry about cross-pollination because every flower pollinates itself, which is different than something like a squash. If you have two varieties next to each other, you might get some cross-pollination in there, so you're gonna have to space it out. Next, we wanna mimic what happens to a tomato in nature when it naturally falls off the plant to the ground and then begins fermenting. To do that, we're going to first cut open the tomato. This fermentation process in nature is important, and I'll get into that. So what we want to do is cut open the tomato. I like to cut it in quarters like this. And you'll notice on these tomatoes here, it's got this little gelatin around it, and that's what's known as a sprout inhibitor. That's what makes it so the seed doesn't start sprouting when it's inside of the fruit. And what we're going to need to do is mimic that fermentation process to remove those sprout inhibitors. So we're just going to scrape this into a cup, just with a spoon like this. And this tomato doesn't have a lot of seeds in it. It's a little bit low when it comes to seed content. So we're just going to scrape all that stuff in there, all the gelatin that goes along with it, the sprout inhibitor, which we're going to be removing through this fermentation process. So this one right here, we've scraped all the stuff out of it. As you can see, we can still have this tomato that we can eat. We're going to be able to enjoy this tomato, put it into salads and stuff, so we're not wasting a tomato by burying it and then just having it mold in the ground. We want it to ferment. We don't want it to mold. Through this fermentation process, the sprout inhibitors are going to be broken down, which is an important thing. Even when you're growing cucumbers as well, they have those same seed casing sprout inhibitors. And if you're just taking your tomato, you're slicing it, and you're burying it in the ground, it's still gonna have those sprout inhibitors. It's gonna greatly reduce your rate of germination, which is something we don't want. And then if you have a tomato like I have here, which doesn't have a lot of juice in it, you may want to add just a tiny bit of water to make sure that the fermentation process goes well, but it will slow it down a little bit. If you have a tomato that's nice and juicy when you clean it out, then you can just leave it like that. Next, we're going to let this sit for a couple days and then come by once or twice a day just to mix it up so the mold doesn't get at the top. It's not going to hurt the seeds or anything, but it'll just make it a better chance. Plus, this could actually combat a lot of diseases when you ferment it like this. So we're going to let it sit for a couple days, come by, mix it up just a little bit, and then after 3 days or so, your seeds are going to start sticking to the bottom. Right here, you'll see these two I saved seeds from a couple days ago. This was the same variety right next to it right there. That's the pink accordion. And then as I take this up, you'll notice the good seeds have sank to the bottom. There are some varieties where the seeds won't sink to the bottom, so you just got to make sure you know in regards to that. But here's another one where it had a lot more juice in it. I didn't have to add any water, and we've got a bunch of seeds at the bottom. So you're gonna wanna know varieties, just like you're gonna wanna make sure that they're open pollinated or heirloom. Next, we're just gonna pour these out into a strainer and spray all the other stuff off of it. After your little mixture has sat for a little while, about 3 days or so, and you don't want the temperatures too hot, you don't want them over 70, and you don't want it too cold either. We're just gonna pour these, after they're fermented, into this strainer here. Some of those seeds at the bottom, we'll make sure we get those, and then we'll hose it all off. And I'm just gonna get these ones that were in the cup. Dump those into there as well. Make sure we got all of them. Then I'm just gonna push some of this meat through the strainer just to get it out of there. You can see the variety doesn't have a lot of seeds in it. After they're all cleaned off like that, we'll shake it. And then what I like to do is to knock it onto a paper plate, not even a paper towel, because I found that sometimes the seeds stick into the paper towel. So we've got them all out onto the paper plate. We'll spread them so they dry evenly. And then I'll show you one of them up close that the sprout inhibitor is not on there anymore. So right here we have the seed after it's fermented, all clean with no sprout inhibitor. And this is when it's fresh out of the plant. It's got that sprout inhibitor, you can see it holding onto it like that. Some people like to just take a paper towel and wipe that off, but that actually tends to be more work because you can see it kind of wants to hang on to it. So I have found when you mimic nature and do it like this, it's the best, easiest, most practical way with the highest germination. When you just scrape the inhibitor off, I've found that the germination is lower. Now that we're at this point, what we're gonna wanna do is go through and try to separate these seeds as best we can. And we use this paper plate because it'll dry and it won't just have the water sit on it. If you use something like a ceramic plate, then the water is just gonna sit and pool. This paper plate will allow it to dry and they won't stick to this plate as much as they would to a paper towel. Right here you can see the one that has a sprout inhibitor on it. It looks much different. And when they dry, they seem to not even look as healthy. When I fermented them, the seeds seem to have like these little white hairs on them. They look lush, healthy, beautiful, high germination rate. We're going to leave these seeds for about a week or so in an area that has good ventilation, that's not very hot or very cold, about 60, 70 degrees or so. And then after that week, I'll put them in a plastic bag and I'll make sure I put up a paper towel that's folded up just to absorb any moisture that might be left in there. If you follow the advice of some of these hacky videos on YouTube, people who don't even show their gardens, what you're gonna end up with is tomatoes in the ground that are molded. You wasted a tomato with little to no sprouts, and that really just angers me so much because these people claim to know what they're talking about, claim to give you good advice, but it clearly isn't. And what happens is we have new gardeners, people who wanna start growing some of their own food, they try these things out, they see that it doesn't work, and then they blame themselves. They say, oh, I don't have a green thumb, I can't do that, and that actually restricts them from growing their own food. Nothing makes me angrier than discouraging others from growing their own food and taking back control of their own lives. Another thing is when these people make the videos, they'll often just like grab a tomato from the grocery store, not even knowing if it's open pollinated or hybrid. And when you save hybrid seeds from tomatoes, what's gonna happen is you're not gonna get the same plant over and over. So again, you might get discouraged if you're a new gardener, thinking that you did something wrong because you've got a completely different plant than the one you planted. Often it doesn't taste as good and it doesn't do as well. We only wanna save seeds from open pollinated heirloom varieties from ripe tomatoes. The ones you get in the store aren't even usually ripe, and they're definitely not picked ripe. Tuck's just relaxing in the garden with me today. It's pretty nice, but it's a little hot. So he decided to dig his own little hole here to cool himself off. But he's my shadow, so he's always behind me, always following along, always loyal. Throw some hearts down in the comments if you love seeing Tuck, if he brightens your day up, because he always does for me. When you save seeds the right way, it's just an incredible thing. You go from one tomato plant and you get all these seeds back. This isn't even one that has a lot of seeds. So what that is just a beautiful thing to me. It's like the law of increasing returns. It's incredible. Like I said, you invest one little thing, you get so many back, and then you multiply more and more. You could plant those next year, you can share them with friends, and you have that good feeling knowing that you saved an open pollinated or an heirloom variety. You know that it's gonna be just as good or better than the one you planted the year before. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got a lot of value out of it, and I hope you take some of my advice and not just take the quick, simple, little easy way out of it, because it ends up bringing frustration, anger, and could be discouraging as well. It reminds me of a quote that says, "The path of least resistance makes all rivers and most people crooked." If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, and don't forget to fill out that survey down low. It'll be a huge help. Give your input, let me know what you're thinking, and check out the merch too. Tuck and James Prigioni will be back to you real soon. We out.